يتدبرون القرآن
ولو كان من عند غير الله لوجدوا فيه اختلافا كثيرا
أفلا يتدبرون القرآن ولو كان من عند غير الله لوجدوا فيه اختلافا كثيرا.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهديه الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Surah An-Nisa, surah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed to the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam with rulings, especially related to women and the relationship between men and women, whether it's marriage or outside the fold of marriage, how to regulate our life and to witness the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala according to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. He is our creator. He's the one that knows exactly what we need and what is good for us and what would make us fulfill the purpose of our existence, and that is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, to be obedient to Him. And He's the most merciful subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is no rule, there is no order, there is no sin unless it's meant for our goodness in this life and in the hereafter. Nothing to make it difficult for us. It's the total opposite. But sometimes human beings, they choose to make it difficult for themselves. And this is the amana, this is the trust that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala entrusted us with when He created us. We're created to listen and to obey, and we have the ability to make decisions. Animals, they don't. Angels, they don't. Human beings, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them the ability to make decisions, and that's what we're tested with regards to. That's why we need to be steadfast and to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always to get to learn what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us, and then to be patient to apply the orders of Allah. We're discussing inshallah ta'ala verses in Surah An-Nisa from verse number 32 to 35. And these verses mainly talk about still the relationship between men and women and some of the marital problems that might occur in the marriage and how to fix that, because marriage is such an important thing, not for the individuals that are married, but for the whole ummah, for the whole nation, for the coming generations, for the establishment of the ubudiyyah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So things has to be looked from that perspective. Let's start with verse number 32. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ولا تتمنوا ما فضل الله به بعضكم على بعض للرجال نصيب مما اكتسبوا وللنساء نصيب مما اكتسبن واسألوا الله من فضله إن الله كان بكل شيء عليما. Which means, and do not wish for that by which Allah has made some of you exceed others. For men is a share of what they have earned, and for women is a share of what they have earned. And ask Allah of His bounty. Indeed, Allah is ever of all things knowing. This is an ayah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbidding the believers from something. وَلَا تَتَمَنَّوا. And it's basically continuing the context of the call, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, O you who believe. So it's related to the believers. So the believers, they need to listen and to learn and to submit themselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَلَا تَتَمَنَّوا. تَتَمَنَّوا in the plural tense, do not wish. ما فضل الله به بعضكم على بعض. What Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made some of you exceed others. It shows that the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on earth, that some people, they excel over others in many things in this life, physically, materialistically. And this is not necessarily means that these people, those who excel, they will be in the hereafter on a higher level or better in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This life is nothing but a test. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, out of His way of creating this life, that some people, they excel, and it's a mean of test, and it's a test for them, And if they pass the test, that means they're successful. And some people are less. Some people are rich, some people are poor. Some people, they have sicknesses and some people don't. Some people are deficient in certain things and others are not deficient in the same things. And it's all part of the test. So that the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not one thing, but it's patience, it's seeking the rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's being grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We are test to one another. People have that in their life. When they go to the workplace, there are people in charge. There's the boss, and there are the managers, and there are the ones that would be under them, and they're supposed to listen to their orders. This is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us. If there is nobody, for example, in a city, in a big city, there is cleaning the garbage of others, then things or life becomes very difficult. So there are always the need of everyone, and everybody lives with harmony if everybody understands their positions. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now here is talking not about with regards to work and so on, it's with regards to something that we don't have a say in, something that we are born with, something that we cannot push away from ourselves, being a man or being a woman. This is the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the destiny of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the most wise, the most high. So when people wish to be in one gender or the other, this is not permissible because the matter is already over, it's finished. There is some narrations, whether it's authentic or not, that one of the women companions of the Prophet ﷺ, she came to the Prophet ﷺ and she mentioned something, and it's very interesting to see how the companions radiallahu anhum, what's their concern. When they see the verses of the Quran revealed to the Prophet ﷺ, and men, they have basically more physical actions in matters of worship. They go frequently for Hajj and Umrah, they fight for the sake of Allah, they go to the masajid 5 times a day and so on. So some of the women, they were concerned, are the men will get more rewards in the hereafter than the women? So they went to the Prophet ﷺ and they asked him this question. And some were related even to the matters of inheritance. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed this verse and others, وَلَا تَتَمَنَّوْا مَا فَضَّلَ اللَّهُ بِهِ بَعْضَكُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ. Do not wish for what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made some of you exceed others. But when it comes to the hereafter, the Prophet ﷺ, when he gave the answer that for the woman to be obedient to her husband, she gets all of this. So as far as the reward in the hereafter, don't worry. You can excel. You can be the best. You can enter the Jannah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you in this life. So He will judge you with what is given to you. So if it's given to you that you are a male or a female, then this is meant to be this way. If you take the means and you're poor, it's meant to be this way. If you take the means and you be rich, this is meant to be this way, and so on. So for people to be able to understand that we need to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with whatever situation that we are in. If a person falls sick, this is meant to be this way. So worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala according to your capacity. It doesn't mean that you'll be deficient in hereafter because you cannot, for example, stand in the salah because you don't have legs. For example, does that make you less in rewards in the hereafter compared to those who they stand in the salah? Of course not. The reward will be given in full. But if a person chooses to sit while they have the capability of standing, that's something else. So the same thing, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created you as a woman. It's meant to be this way. And that woman, if she's obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, she can excel to be better than many of the men. And again, this refers to matters of the hereafter and the ubudiyyah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also relates to means of inheritance. When the men, as far as the brothers and sisters are concerned, they get double what the women get, and so on. Physical strength. A woman might wish to have the strength of a man, for example. Or a man might wish to have something from the woman. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbidding us. وَلَا تَتَمَنَّوْا مَا فَضَّلَ اللَّهُ بِهِ بَعْضَكُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ. Do not wish what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made you, some of you exceed others. So this is again related to the things that we don't have a say, we cannot change in our life. But the things that we can excel, somebody, for example, can they use this verse to say, well, if a person is ignorant, does not have much knowledge, So he would say, I should not wish to be like those who are excelling and exceeding us in knowledge. So he's satisfied with the status that he's in. This is wrong, of course. Why? Because he's still alive, he can seek knowledge. He can take the means to be among those who excel and those who exceed others. In matters of ibadah, can a person would say the same thing. With matters of sins, of course not. But this is mainly related to men and women. Do not wish to be a man, do not wish to be a woman. Just be content, be pleased with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created you with, and be content with the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala related to men or women. لِلرِّجَالِ, and the reason why this is like that, because the ayah says, لِلرِّجَالِ نَصِيبٌ مِمَّا اكْتَسَبُوا وَلِلنِّسَاءِ نَصِيبٌ مِمَّا اكْتَسَبْنَ, which means for men is a share of what they have earned, and for women is a share of what they have earned. Matters of inheritance, the rules from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is all, you'd see the differences between both because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created them different. There are things that is common between both of them, matters of worship, the rewards and so on, honor, respect, goodness, mercy. But when it comes to some of the things, because they are physically different, women, they bear the children, they're the ones that get pregnant and they're the ones that get birth, and because of that there are certain rulings that would pertain to this. Women, they have menses, so there are certain rulings that relates to this. Women in general, they are physically weaker than men, physically. So there are certain rulings to protect the rights of women so that they're not abused by the men, those who are physically stronger, and so on and so forth. Right? So people need to witness this. But to be deceived by the calls of some that might sound nice, but in reality it's evil. When they're calling for equality in all things, this is actually abusing the weaker side or abusing the women. When you want to make, when people want for the men and women to be equal in everything, this is not fair. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created them different. But if people are calling for justice for all, this is valid. So what we need to seek is justice. So for someone, for example, a child, we don't want to have the child equally to what is strong and fit. So now we ask the child to go work hard labor. Why? Because people are equal. Nobody would ever say that, right? So there's rights to be observed for the child. There's children, there's pregnancy. So a pregnant woman, how can be she equal to a man that is strong and fit and everything? So they both go and work for constructions, for example. It doesn't work this way. So the society have to consider that. And the role of women is not less than the role of a man. The role of a woman when she's bearing the children and she's taking care of them, this is such an important role because human beings are what is meant by all these rulings. So when the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes, it does not deal with the greed in some. It does not deal with the personal benefits that makes the person blind of everything else. It gives the best for the society, for the families, for the coming generations. And that's what we need to witness. And that's what we need to be patient. We're patient when we're giving others what we wish for ourselves. It's not necessarily something in our genes that we would love this. We would love all means of goodness for ourselves. But because of the betterment for everyone, we would choose to sacrifice sometimes. And that's what is basically the goal of the deen of Islam, is to bring the overall benefit and not to be greedy and not to be selfish and so on. So witnessing that there, for both of them, there are certain shares according to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created them. وَاسْأَلُوا اللَّهَ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ. This is what we need to focus on. Instead of being busy and concerned and wasting our life, oh, I wish I can be this, I wish I can be that, wishful thinking. Instead of that, وَاسْأَلُوا اللَّهَ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from His bounty, the endless bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what the focus should be of the women. Should be the focus of men. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from His bounty so that we would excel in what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us to achieve. And this is such an important way of life, that we constantly ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from His bounty and from His favors. We do not know what is good for us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. And this part of the verse directing us in our dua, since we're ordered to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from His favors, in the hereafter we know exactly what is good for us. So we know that Jannah is the place of the believers. So we should ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for Jannah. We should seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from the hellfire. This is known, very clear. In matters of this life, this dunya, this world that we live in, we know for sure to be obedient to Allah is a good thing. We know for sure for us to be steadfast, to follow the way of the Prophet ﷺ, to guide us to be righteous. This is definitely a good thing, and we should ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to achieve that and to be steadfast and so on. Then the materialistic things, whether to be rich or to be poor or to be this or that, we do not really know what is good for us or what is bad for us, based on what we know for sure that is good for us. So if we decided that Jannah is good for us, but then anything materialistic in this life, if we know that it would lead us to the hellfire, is that good? Definitely it's not good. Even if it tastes good, if it feels good, but if it leads us to the hellfire, we're now contradicting ourselves. So to be with peace with ourselves, to be truthful, we should not change. If we seek Jannah, if we seek refuge in Allah from the hellfire, then anything that leads to Jannah, this is what we want. Even if it would make us endure some patience, even if it will make us sacrifice a little bit, we're willing to do this because the final result, the end result is the Jannah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have the best of this life and the hereafter. That's why the general dua is so comprehensive, brings you all means of goodness and leave it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This car, this specific car, not necessarily will bring you happiness. That specific house would not necessarily bring you goodness and happiness. That specific degree is not necessarily what would bring you goodness and happiness. It might not. So that's why there is the istikhara salah. There is asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from His bounty, and having the main concern in ourselves is to be firm on matters of the deen, and to ask for the best of this life and in the hereafter, and to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from all means of evil, whether it's in this life, physical pain, stresses, anything, and also in the hereafter. وَاسْأَلُوا اللَّهَ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from His bounties. And it's also another benefit when a person is reciting the Quran. You recite something like this, stop and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from His bounties, even if it's an optional salah. During the salah, in the night prayer, the Prophet ﷺ used to, if there is a verse talks about Jannah, he would ask Allah for Jannah. If verse talks about the hellfire, he seek refuge in Allah from the hellfire. If the verse says, وَاسْأَلُوا اللَّهَ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ, ask Allah from His bounties, the Prophet ﷺ would ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from His favors. إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ عَلِيمًا. Indeed, Allah is the all-knower of all things. We do not know, and He knows. So we need to put our trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and don't waste our life dealing with things that is already determined, but instead to be steadfast and to seek the favors and the bounties from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We continue, inshallah ta'ala, with other verses after the break, so stay with us, inshallah.
يتدبرون القرآن.
Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. After we heard in verse number 32 how to depend with our hearts on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to put our trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with regards to His rules and regulations in the Quran and the ahkam, that this is the best for us, and to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from His favors because He knows best. And that means we would submit ourselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to humble ourselves to fulfill the orders of Allah. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after that, in the next verse, verse number 33, He says, وَلِكُلٍّ جَعَلْنَا مَوَالِيَ مِمَّا تَرَكَ الْوَالِدَانِ وَالْأَقْرَبُونَ وَالَّذِينَ عَقَدَتْ أَيْمَانُكُمْ فَآتُوهُمْ نَصِيبَهُمْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ شَهِيدًا. Which means, and for all we have made heirs to what is left by parents and relatives, and to those whom your oaths have bound to you, give them their share. Indeed, Allah is ever over all things a witness. وَلِكُلٍّ جَعَلْنَا مَوَالِي. For all, meaning for all of you, we have made جَعَلْنَا مَوَالِيَ, we have made heirs. This is, mawali can mean more than one thing, but in this context means heirs, those who will inherit after you. مِمَّا تَرَكَ الْوَالِدَانِ وَالْأَقْرَبُونَ, what your parents or your relatives have left. So your parents, they passed away, your relatives passed away, then there are inheritors. And we talked about inheritance and the fixed shares and the distributions and so on. Also, the verse can mean that for all of you, we have made heirs for what you leave behind, the parents and the relatives. So it's either referring to the individual Muslims, or it's referring to those who passed away, the parents and the relatives. For each and every one, they leave behind parents and relatives, they inherit from them. Also, it means that for all, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made heirs, inheritors, for what you leave behind from your parents and your relatives, they inherit from you. So this is basically part of what is mentioned before with the inheritance. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالَّذِينَ عَقَدَتْ أَيْمَانُكُمْ فَآتُوهُمْ نَصِيبَهُم. عَقَدَتْ أَيْمَانُكُمْ, which means those whom your oaths have bound, give them their share. This is referring to something that they used to do before the Islam, times of ignorance, and it was established in the beginning and then it was abrogated. What it means here, those who whom your oaths have bound to, that people used to, whenever they're alive, they would take the muwala or the ayman, or they take their oath that forever they wish for example, his friend or whatever, that he would inherit from him after he dies. He would say that you have that specific share after I pass away, you take that share from me, from my inheritance. Someone that would not normally inherit, even if it's a friend, anyone. They used to have this in Jahiliyyah in times of ignorance, and they would be supporters to one another. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the beginning this was approved, but then it was abrogated by the verses of the inheritance. So this part of the verse, the ruling of it has been changed, has been cancelled, has been abrogated. The nasakh had happened to this part of the verse when it comes to inheritance. The laws of inheritance does not include those who are not related, only the ones that are mentioned in the Quran and in the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Other than that, people can write in their will. So the door is not totally closed. You can give from your wealth after you pass away to someone that is not related to you, but the maximum that you can give is 1/3. But without having this as an agreement while a person is alive. Not to make this oath or to make it something that is a covenant between two people, this is not permissible. But if somebody writes something in his will, up to 1/3 to anyone, as long as it's halal permissible, then there is no harm. So this part of the verse is abrogated by the laws of inheritance. إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ شَهِيدًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala indeed is ever over all things a witness. So if you had an agreement with someone, and when one of them they passed away, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that witnessed this. So you should fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and fulfill your covenants and fulfill your promises, even if someone or the other side passed away and there was no witnesses to witness over what you agreed upon. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a shaheed, is the one that witnessed, the best of all witnesses, and people will be questioned about it in the day of judgment. So again, talks about inheritance, that people have heirs, inheritance. This is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You should witness that and witness the certain rulings that talks about inheritance. And the one thing that was abrogated is the thing that has the mutual oath, in which people would inherit from one another, other than what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran. This has been abrogated, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ala kulli shay'in shahida, witnesses over all things. Then after that, some of the things with marital life, marital problems, and how to fix these marital problems, since marriage is such an important relationship in our life to establish the deen of Islam. Verse number 34, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, الرجال قوامون على النساء بما فضل الله بعضهم على بعض وبما أنفقوا من أموالهم فالصالحات قانتات حافظات للغيب بما حفظ الله واللاتي تخافون نشوزهن فعظوهن واهجروهن في المضاجع واضربوهن فإن أطعنكم فلا تبغوا عليهن سبيلا إن الله كان عليا كبيرا. Which means men are in charge of women by right of what Allah has given one over the other and what they spend for maintenance for their wealth. So righteous women are devoutly obedient guardian in the husband's absence, what Allah would have them guard. But those wives from whom you fear arrogance, first advise them, then if they persist, forsake them in bed, and finally strike them. But if they obey you, once more seek no means against them. Indeed, Allah is ever exalted and grand. الرجال قوامون على النساء. This is what the verse starts with. الرجال, the men, قوامون, in charge. This is part of the meaning of قوامون. قوامون comes from قائم. When somebody is standing, that means they are in charge of the women. They maintain the rights of the women. They take care of them. They spend from their wealth on them. They are basically in charge. قوامون على النساء. قوامون على النساء, in charge of women, and على means over, right? So they're having some form of a superiority based on what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestowed on them. It's not a matter of being abusive, of course. Nobody would approve of that. It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this is what we need to put our trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah made men in charge of women. So, and the reason for that, بِمَا فَضَّلَ اللَّهُ بَعْضَهُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ, by what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made them, as it says in the translation, has given one over the other, and what they spend for maintenance for their wealth. So two things, بِمَا فَضَّلَ اللَّهُ بَعْضَهُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made them, or gave the men more physical power. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the men also the ability maybe to make decisions better than women. This is in general. This is how race comparing to another race, or I'm sorry, gender versus another gender. But of course, there are some individuals that might be excel over the others. But as far as the generality is concerned, the gender of men are in charge of women because of these certain virtues, or the certain things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the men with. And as we mentioned before, it doesn't mean that then men will have more rewards than women. If women understand what the purpose of their life, and also the men, and everybody would act according to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from them, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most merciful. But these are facts. And we're living at a time when many or some of the Muslims, they would distort the meanings of these verses to make the way of life of Muslims fit the way of life of the disbelievers. We are unique in our rulings and our way of life, and we need to put our trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and follow the orders of Allah, and to humble ourselves to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and not to be fooled or deceived by the different ways of life that is against our religion. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that men are in charge of women, that matter is finished. We say we listen and we obey, and we should witness the goodness in this. Why? Because of the goals of the Sharia, the goals of the Deen of Islam is different than the goals of greed that other people are living with. In the Deen of Islam, there are certain benefits to be observed. We're not being greedy. We're not asked to be greedy. We're asked to be good to one another. So this is for the betterment of a household. Any household, somebody has to be in charge. And people living in families, whether it's the woman is a wife or a daughter or a sister or whatever there is, people live in a family, and that's why somebody has to be in charge and somebody has to be responsible. And each person, of course, individually, they are responsible. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave this to the men as a responsibility, and they will be asked about it in the Day of Judgment. وَبِمَا أَنفَقُوا مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ, and by what they spend from their wealth. So men, as we heard before also, they have the responsibility of spending on the women. And this is done with honor and dignity. So the women in Islam are honored and dignified that the men spend on them. And as a result of that, they are in charge. And in charge with goodness, with mercy. And we have to see the whole thing as a whole. When we heard in the verses in the Quran, وَعَاشِرُهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ, live with them with goodness. When the Prophet ﷺ will keep on ordering the men to be kind to the women, and to be just to them and to fare with them, and so on. So this is how the Deen of Islam is applied. But someone to take this and to ignore the other rulings, this is definitely not permissible. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about the believing women, فَالصَّالِحَاتُ قَانِتَاتٌ حَافِظَاتُ لِلْغَيْبِ بِمَا حَفِظَ اللَّهِ. The righteous women, فالصالحات, the righteous women, قانتات. قانتات meaning that they are devoutly obedient to their husbands as part of the obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when we talk about obedience, we're not talking about some form of a negative way of life or something that is abusive or anything like that. This is matters of goodness, because the deen of Islam brings what is good. So she's obedient to her husband as far as related to her obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in matters of goodness, not obey the husband in sins, in something that is over her capacity, but obedient to him. حافظات للغيب, they guard and protect the unseen, the secrets, the things that is between her and her husband. She does not expose her husband. She does not go out there and speak negatively against her husband and so on. She protects the secrets of her household, بما حفظ الله, but by what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered them to guard. The special things that is present between the husband and the wife, something to be respected, not permissible for both of them to expose one another. So these are the good qualities of the Muslim women, not the one that is opposing her husband or causing dispute in the household and competing. They're both competing with one another to see who is in charge. And sometimes women are praising others. If she's in charge of the household and she has the man following her orders and so on, this is corrupting the human nature and corrupting families, and as a result of that, corrupting the offsprings to come. Things has to be according to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered us for what is good in this life and in the hereafter. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about if problems arise, either it's from the wife's side or from the husband's side or from both of them. From the wife's side, meaning if she's the one that is committing injustice. This is a case where the wife is committing injustice, she's transgressing the limits, and the man is on the right side. He is doing what is right, and she is doing what is evil. So there's a solution to this. On the other hand, if the man is doing what is wrong and he is committing injustices and transgressing, and the wife is being righteous and being good, this is another solution to it. What if in the third case, if both of them they have a dispute and each one think that they are doing what is right and the other side is wrong? There's another solution to this. So the first case where the woman is being arrogant, being transgressing the limits, not obeying her husband in matters of goodness, and she's causing this discomfort and problems in the marriage. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَاللَّاتِ تَخَافُونَ نُشُوزَهُنْ, the ones that you fear their nushuz. Their nushuz, and nushuz as they translate it as arrogance, but literally when something nashes is something that is higher on the ground, a higher part of the ground, meaning forms of arrogance. She's not humble, she is not devoutly obedient, she is disobeying her husband clearly in things that the household can never continue like this. So the ayah says, وَالَّتِي تَخَافُونَ, the ones that you fear that she might reach this level. That's why the cure should be done early on, not to wait till the matter is already there and she is in dispute with her husband and she is refusing to fulfill the rights of the husband, because since it's a relationship, in any relationship there are rights to be observed, and that's why there is the rights of the husband, there is the rights of the wife. So the one that you fear that she would be arrogantly disobedient and does not fulfill the rights of her husband, then فَعِظُوهُنْ, admonish them, advise them, remind them of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why the thing that keeps the household strong is the deen of Islam. It's for people to understand the purpose of their life and to witness the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His orders. So when this is not being practiced, then it brings all kinds of problems. Sins affect the life of people and their relationships. So admonishing and advising, this is the first route to be taken. We continue inshallah ta'ala after the break, so stay with us.
يتدبرون القرآن أفلا يتدبرون القرآن.
Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulullah. Still with verse number 34, and with the things that might arise in families, marital problems, and how to fix that. It shows that this is valid to happen. This is something that human nature, they might fall into some mistakes. And the cure, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that if the fault is from the wife's side, she is acting arrogantly, she is refusing to fulfill the rights of her husband, then the order for the husband to admonish her, to remind her of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And of course this means that the husband is a righteous person, he's obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's why he's reminding her of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why before that even household should be established on the deen of Islam, to be obedient to Allah. The sins have a severe effect in relationships and in marital issues. Shaitan works very hard to separate the husband from the wife, especially among Muslims. So it has to be established on the deen, and people should always repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if people repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah will make it easy for them. But again, physically in the case, he should advise her, and this is a level that should be taken care of. If it takes a long time and there is progress, then it should continue. But once establishing this and there is no benefits and she continue to be transgressing the limits and being arrogant and so on, then the second mean of cure, and this is in order, وَهْجُرُوهُنْ, forsake them in bed. A woman with honor and dignity would see that as a real hurt to her emotions, and this might be the reason for her to repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to realize that she's doing something evil. So he would forsake her in bed and stay away from her as a way to show that he is not pleased with her arrogance and her attitude. And if that didn't work, وَضْرِبُهُنْ, and then the last is to resort to striking them. And the word وَضْرِبُهُنْ, as it means here, should be understood in the proper way, because people, they use this verse to cause so much loud noise basically, and nobody can ever defeat the deen of Islam. The rulings in the deen of Islam is the most perfect way of life if we understand the purpose of it. But those people, those who want to try to cause any thing of trouble, they would use this word and they would say the deen of Islam is ordering men to hit women and abusing the women and so on. Well, we need to understand the verses of the Quran the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed it to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We always say the Quran is to be understood by the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the way it was practiced at the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because the Quran is not just some words that has no life to it or actions to it. The Quran can mean many things, right? Yes, and the word وَضْرِبُهُنَّ can means and hit them, right? So how would we then understand the Quran? We said that this is the methodology to understand the Quran, is to see how the Prophet ﷺ applied it. The language in the word وَضْرِبُهُنَّ can mean many different levels of hitting. So what does it mean by this word? With the light of the rest of the verses of the Quran, with the life of the Prophet ﷺ, because the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they applied this in their life. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ in his hadith, when he said, عليكم بسنتي وسنة الخلفاء الراشدين المهديين بعدي, stay on my sunnah and the way of the rightly guided Khalifa after me. And how we always say that the right way of understanding the deen of Islam is to understand it according to the early generations of Islam. This is a mandatory thing. This is not just in these verses, in all of our affairs. So when we apply this according to these conditions, how did the Prophet ﷺ apply this in his life? And he's the best example for us. Did the Prophet ﷺ ever hit any of his wives? The answer is no. Clearly, without any exceptions. And the hadith of Anas radiallahu anhu, that the Prophet ﷺ never hit anyone, a child or a woman, unless he's fighting for the sake of Allah. So the Prophet ﷺ never done that. And he's the best example in our life, right? And we're talking here about a situation where someone that is so rebellious, that is going from one stage of cure to the other and nothing works, right? So how then this is supposed to be something that brings what is good, not a punishment for the sake of punishment, but something that maybe would make that person realize how evil they are doing, so that they would change their life to what is good. People in their systems in their life, they have prison and so on. For what reason? For people to, this is how they think, for people to change, to be righteous people after they've been in crimes and so on. So something that can bring benefit, it's a good thing. So the word وَضْرِبُهُنْ, or strike them, it means to do it after taking all of these means without incurring physical pain, as Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu said, like with a siwak or something, right? And this is, for someone with honor and dignity, they would consider that to be a severe thing, something that would make them really think. And again, this is not someone that is used to be abused, someone that has never been touched whatsoever. So if this has happened after the admonishing and advising and forsaken their beds and they continue to be rebellious, then if he does this to her with like a siwak, as the Ibn Abbas he said, if any goodness still present in this wife, she would maybe repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and go back to her senses. If there's nothing remain, then that means divorce is the second thing. But as also the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, he referred to that the best among you are not the ones that would do this. So if it reached this level, it's better for him to divorce her if she's the one that is transgressing the limits. Not to be understood like many people do, Muslims and non-Muslims. Husbands, they are physically stronger than women. So what do they do when they have a dispute with their wife? They're arguing with each other. Some of them, ignorantly, they would hit their wives. And they would use the strength that they have to overpower their wives. This is evil. There's no such a thing in the deen of Islam that this is permissible. This is injustice. To incur pain, to physically abuse the women by hitting them as a result of a moment of anger, this is haram. This is not permissible in the deen of Islam. So things has to be understood in the proper way. And then when people do this and they show a woman, for example, with pink eye, with blue eye, and they see the abuse and they say this is how the Muslims are, this is non-practicing Muslims. These are Muslims that are committing sins, and human beings, they make mistakes. But the religion of Islam is so perfect that it's supposed to be to bring what is good and to serve what is good. فَإِنْ أَطَعْنَكُمْ فَلَا تَبْغُوا عَلَيْهِنَّ سَبِيلًا, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said. فَإِنْ أَطَعْنَكُمْ, which means if they obey you after all of this, then فَلَا تَبْغُوا عَلَيْهِنَّ سَبِيلًا, do not transgress your limits. Because what is meant by this is for things to be good and for the relationship to continue to be good. إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ عَلِيًّا كَبِيرًا, indeed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ever exalted and grand. Ever exalted aliyan, so that the men don't think that they have some form of a superiority, so that they would transgress and commit injustices. Remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is above all. And if injustices are committed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will hold that person accountable. And He subhanahu wa ta'ala is kabiran, is the greatest subhanahu wa ta'ala and grand. So don't think that you would do anything with your arrogance and your physical power and so on. The second case, or the third case, in case there is dispute between both, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the next verse, verse number 35, وَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ شِقَاقَ بَيْنِهِمَا فَبَعَثُوا حَكَمًا مِّنْ أَهْلِهِ وَحَكَمًا مِّنْ أَهْلِهَا إِنْ يُرِيدَ إِصْلَاحًا يُوَفِّقِ اللَّهُ بَيْنَهُمَا إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ عَلِيمًا خَبِيرًا, which means, and if you fear dissension between the two, send an arbitrator from his people and an arbitrator from her people. If they both desire reconciliation, Allah will cause it between them. Indeed, Allah is ever knowing and acquainted with all things. So if the dispute reaches another level, or it's from both parties, وَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ, and the call is to the Muslims, to the community, that they get to know about the situation. Now the situation is not just within the household, it kind of sound outside of the household. So people get to know this. شِقَاقَ بَيْنِهِمَا, shiqaq is when there is a split on the earth, one people or some people on one side, other people on the other side. So they become distant from one another, cause dissension between one another, which is something that is definitely not good. Before resorting to divorce right away, again the religion of Islam is trying to find means of cure, so that the better thing would happen and people will get together again for the betterment of the children and so on. But if it didn't work out, then sometimes maybe divorce is one of the lesser of two evils. But if this is the case between both of them, فَبَعَثُوا حَكَمًا مِّنْ أَهْلِهِ, send hakam, an arbitrator from his family, someone that is just, someone that is righteous, not just anyone that would get angry and fight with each other, someone that is wise, righteous, a good person from his family. وَحَكَمًا مِّنْ أَهْلِهَا, an arbitrator from her family, trustworthy, worthy, righteous, a good person. إِن يُرِيدَ إِصْلَاحًا يُوَفِّقِ اللَّهُ بَيْنَهُمَا, if both arbitrators they intended what is good and to reform the problem between both, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make it easy for them. So this is a good news for them if they intended to do what is good. And these arbitrators, whatever they decide at the end, whether it's divorce or to continue or whatever, then their decisions is to be executed, is to be done. And this is again where they reach the level they cannot communicate with each other. There is no authority whatsoever for the man over his wife, and in that case they would lead to this way of cure. Inna Allah kana aliman khabira. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ever knowing and acquainted. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that this is the best way, and this is the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants them to deal with each other. And that's why the last resort, which is mentioned in the Quran, if they divorce, then it's permissible in this case. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most just, and if someone transgressed the limits and committed sins, people will be held accountable for their actions. So knowing and realizing these types of cure is very important, and to take out of the hearts the arrogance and the egos and all these types of things, and the greed and the selfishness, and instead a person should, the concern should be the cure and the goodness of the household, and to remember the children, and to remember the good things for the children, and for them to have a good environment, and not again to be selfish and greedy and so on. So the overall concern that we need to get from this, that the benefit of any family life, what is the most important thing is for the deen to be established. People in their lives, sometimes they think of their own personal benefit as individuals, materialistic benefits, whether they're happy or sad. Life is not about just be physically happy or physically sad. Sometimes we face tests. So for example, if a wife, she's been tested by a bad husband, as long as the deen is established, be patient. The deen established in your household. As long as the deen is established, if you can be patient, be patient. Seek rewards from Allah. Make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Try your best to cure the situation. On the other side of the man, he has his wife that is causing him trouble and so on. Be patient with her. If the deen is established in the household, unless once there is dissension, that means the deen to be established in the household becomes difficult, then this is when we need to take the measures. Some people, for example, for women, for example, if the husband is not making salah, they don't really care much, as long as he's spending on his household and he's being kind to his wife. They say, may Allah guide him, right? But when he, for example, commits a sin with another woman, she says, that's it, I cannot live with him anymore. Of course, she has the right to be angry, but the problem is, where is the benefit of the deen in this overall situation? A husband is not establishing the salah whatsoever. What's the purpose of marriage to start with if the deen is not established? So these verses is talking to who? Is it talking to people that have no value to the religion whatsoever, and then we're dealing just with that situation to make it curable and so on? No, this is referring to the believers. The believers, those who are righteous, those who wants to apply the deen of Islam, then the cure and then all means of goodness will happen. But if people are disobedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, state of forgetfulness of matters of the deen, then it's a normal thing for the households to be basically on fire. People are just in dissension. Why? Because of their sins. So the main concern is to establish the deen, is to be righteous, to be obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And once we're like this, many of the problems in the households will be resolved. And in cases where you find you can only control yourself, and when you have a relationship, there are two people. So you're responsible for your own actions. But sometimes the other side, you can't control what they're doing. You cannot control the hearts of others. So what do? Then these are the measures to be taken. Having the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and seeking help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And again, the most important thing is to have the concern of the deen. What is the benefit of our deen, our religion? How can we be strong in our religion? How can we fulfill the purpose of our life? And that's why it should be dealt with the people of knowledge. Those who follow the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. We seek their help. We seek their advice. They are the ones to try to cause peace in the families and so on, and not to resort to things that has nothing to do with the deen of Islam. This is how the Quran is, and this is what we need to be patient with. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring peace in all of the households of all the Muslims, and for us to realize the wisdom of the deen of Islam and the orders of Allah, and to be steadfast and to be among the people of Jannah. We continue inshallah ta'ala with more verses in Surah An-Nisa next time if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us life. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
أفلا يتدبرون القرآن ولو كان من عند غير الله لوجدوا فيه اختلافا كثيرا
أفلا يتدبرون القرآن ولو كان من عند غير الله لوجدوا فيه اختلافا كثيرا
أفلا يتدبرون القرآن ولو كان من عند غير الله لوجدوا فيه اختلافا